Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if being more stressed or amped up actually makes you better at focusing on what is important? Or does it just make you kind of frantic and scattered? Well, this new study dives right into that question. We're going to explore a really cool experiment that tested whether feeling more aroused, if you will, helps us narrow down our attention or widen it. Think about times you've been super focused, or times you felt overwhelmed. Does your alertness level change how you see the world? Literally, in terms of where you pay attention, the researchers here had a hunch based on something called the arousal-biased competition theory. This big idea basically says that when we're more aroused, our brain gets really good at picking out the most important thing and ignoring everything else. So they thought maybe if you're more aroused, your attention will either get super sharp and focused on a tiny spot, or it'll spread out really far, depending on what the task demands. So the big question was, does feeling more keyed up make your attention more focused or more widespread, whatever that focus is supposed to be? Let's see how they tested this. They got 39 students to do a kind of game. First, to make sure their attention was either narrow or broad, they had participants look at a bunch of dots inside circles. Sometimes the circle was small, which they hoped would make people focus narrowly. Other times the circle was really big, encouraging a broader focus. This part was like tuning their attention. Now, for the arousal part, in half of the game sessions, participants wore headphones and listened to loud white noise. This is a common way to try and boost someone's general alertness or arousal level. After they did that attention tuning game, they had to do another task, a visual search. Imagine looking for a specific shape like a slightly tilted ellipse among other similar shapes. This search task was set up so that the target could be either right in the center of the screen or out towards the edges. They expected that a narrow focus would be good for finding targets in the center, and a broad focus would be better for finding targets off to the side. They measured how well the participants did on the search task, like how fast they were and how many mistakes they made. They also looked at their pupil size, which can be a sign of how aroused someone is. And guess what? They found that the white noise did seem to increase arousal, and the dot tasks did seem to change how people focus their attention. So the setup worked, but here is the big reveal. Did the increased arousal from the white noise actually make the attention focus even stronger, whether it was narrow or broad? The answer, according to some pretty solid statistical tests, was no. They found strong evidence that arousal didn't boost the effect of the attention tuning. Basically, the white noise didn't make the narrow focus any narrower, nor did it make the broad focus any broader in how it affected their performance on the search task. Let's unpack what that means. Remember, they expected that if attention was set to narrow, high arousal would make you even better at spotting things in the center. And if attention was set to broad, high arousal would help you spot things on the edges even more. But that didn't happen. The arousal didn't seem to amplify these effects at all. The results were pretty much the same whether the white noise was on or off. Especially when you looked at the most complex interactions, where all three factors arousal, attention scope, and target location came together. This is a bit of a curveball for the arousal-biased competition theory we talked about earlier. That theory suggests that arousal sharpens your focus on what is important. But here, even when they tried to make crucial details more or less important by setting a narrow or broad attention, arousal didn't seem to latch onto that and make it even more potent. Now, a researcher might wonder, well, maybe the white noise didn't actually make them that much more aroused. But the researchers here argue that white noise is a pretty standard and effective way to boost arousal. Plus, they saw a real effect on pupil size, which is a common indicator of arousal, so they're confident the arousal manipulation itself was successful. Where are the potential weaknesses or things we can't say for sure? One important point is that they only tested 2 levels of arousal, normal and boosted, with white noise. It is possible that the relationship between arousal and attention isn't a simple straight line. It could be more like an inverted U-shape, where too little or too much arousal isn't ideal, and the best focus happens somewhere in the middle. So, it is possible their 2 levels of arousal just happened to be on either side of that optimal point, and that is why they didn't see a big difference. More levels of arousal would be needed to really check that out. Another thing to keep in mind is that this study looked at how arousal affects attention from one moment to the next within the experiment. It doesn't necessarily tell us if arousal can affect how long you manage to hold a certain level of focus over a longer period. So, what is the takeaway here? Even though arousal-biased competition theory has been supported in other areas, like memory and focusing on specific physical features of an object, it might not play out in the same way when it comes to the broader spatial scope of our attention, especially when we're actively trying to control that scope. It suggests that while arousal might amplify our interest in whatever we're already prioritizing, it doesn't necessarily expand or contract the edges of that priority zone itself. It's a fascinating reminder that the brain is complex, and what happens in one cognitive area doesn't always translate directly to another. This research is important because it challenges a core assumption of a popular theory. It suggests that when it comes to the spatial extent of our attention, the link to arousal might be weaker or more nuanced than we previously thought, especially in tasks that involve a lot of conscious control over where we're looking. Future research could explore that inverted U idea or look at different kinds of arousal or different attention tasks. Thanks for joining me on RUBIN'S Mind Lab. If you found this interesting, give us a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more dives into the amazing world of psychology. Let me know in the comments what other research questions you are curious about. See you next time.